Welcome, guys. I'll start off with a prayer and then I'll hand over to you, Michael, and for the night's training session. And welcome aboard, everybody. There may be a few more come, but we'll see who ends up online with us. Let's pray. Dear Father in heaven, thank you that we can meet together like this, even though it would be ideal to meet in person for our Pathfinder training. But we thank you for the opportunity to do it online anyway. We pray that you'll be with us, especially be with Michael as he leads out and facilitates in tonight's teaching lesson. Help us to be able to gain some good, helpful hints and practices that will be able to help us to be more effective in our Pathfinder clubs and help us to have a good discussion too. And we thank you just for the ministry of Pathfinders and all that it does and all that is a blessing to our Pathfinders and our clubs as well and our churches. And we thank you for being present with us tonight in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thanks,
Well,
Phil.
over to you, Michael. I'll go mute and...
Good one. Well, for those watching, if you're not sure who I am, my name's Michael Downing and I'm a District Director in the Victorian Conference and based at Lilydale Church and been working with the Lilydale Pathfinder Club for some time. So be presenting this evening on camping skills from the Master Guide Camping Skills course. And it's a fairly general sort of information about camping, why we go camping, things to consider while we're camping. And some of it you may well already know or have some ideas on, but hopefully you'll pick up some things as we go along. In Pathfinders, camping is a very unique opportunity for us and an opportunity for us to be spending time with the young people, to be out in creation, enjoying time outdoors, and something that we want to be able to plan well so that our camps can run well and be productive, and really the time, our quality time that we're spending together, encouraging, allowing us to grow, to develop friendships and relationships, and in these relationships growing closer to Jesus as well. So we're hoping to have the best time we can and the safest time we can. And a lot of that comes down to planning and preparation. So I'll start sharing this PowerPoint with you as we go through. So in planning for our camp, there's a lot of these running together: camp planning, camp setup, and camp equipment. So they all lean together and work together. But so in terms of planning a camp, we're looking at why are we going camping and how are we choosing an appropriate site. So what's the purpose of our camp? It might be a whole club camp, a unit camp. It could be a hiking camp. It could be a camping skills camp with bushcraft. And it might be a water skiing camp. So what's the purpose of it? And then obviously that leads into what's an appropriate site. So whether it's a hiking location or a private property for our bush skills pioneering type camp, or there might be some specialist rafting camp or that sort of thing. So we look at what's required to achieve that. Who's leading the camp and what sort of access requirements are there for that? So in terms of who's leading it, not only the person in charge of the camp, but in terms of what the camp's trying to achieve, what skills are required, what other leaders are required. Does the club have all that leadership? So it might be specialised skills. So again, the whitewater rafting or sailing or something like that. So we might need to look outside through the church for someone with those skills, or even to hire someone from outside the church or outside our organisation. So that's who we might need to bring in. And in terms of access, we start thinking of permits, access permits for places. Often in Victoria, not necessarily access requirements and permits in a lot of cases, or it hasn't been, but national parks require permits For camp, certainly thinking of Wilson's Prom or somewhere like that, you'll require a camping permit to be able to actually have a campsite. But more and more, particularly with our risk assessment process, we need to contact the landowner, contact the management authority to find out about access, what else might be going on in the area. So you need to have that in place. In terms of our camp plan, what we want to do, what we're hoping to achieve, who knows the plan? So our leadership group knows about it, our pastor or management group would know, but also to pass that on to, we need an emergency contact person so that, again, in terms of our risk assessment process, there'd be an emergency contact person who basically knows all the details of the camp that they could explain to somebody else. And they're also a contact person for parents if they need to find out about the camp or need to perhaps get in contact with someone. But in terms of you're leaving information with that contact person about who's attending, even down to all the vehicles that are on the camp, the planned route of how you're going to get in and out, and those sorts of, all that sort of information. And then the idea of having a plan B or a contingency. Things, because we're out in the wilderness, out in the bush, we're subject to weather conditions and other things that can change. Access can change. So it might be that, so we need to plan that something might change along the way. So if we plan a worst case scenario, so we're aware of it, and then work towards the best time that we can have. But to have that, if we don't have a contingency, we find ourselves perhaps having to cancel the camp, other factors, and worst case scenario, something was to happen that we didn't foresee. So we really need to take into consideration things that can happen on our camp. I guess the other thing we can look at with our current experience with COVID is that, the camp may well just have to be postponed or cancelled altogether because we just we're not able to run it at the time. So the contingency in that regard. Knowing weather forecasting, having an idea of what it's likely to be if we're up in the alpine country. You can expect all types of weather in those areas, but even just a general forecast, it's going to be hot while we're away, going to be wet while we're away. And that leads into what sort of gear and equipment is needed. So in terms of the club gear that we're taking, whether it's a whole of club camp with all the camp kitchen that we're taking, all the equipment, tents and everything else that we might need, or a smaller camp where we bring our own equipment. But then the condition of the equipment's important. We need to make sure that everything's been checked, that we don't end up with tents with pieces missing or other bits and pieces that are missing. We don't have all the gas cooking equipment. So we need to have all that in consideration as well. And as master guides, you might find that if you go to get a tent out of the trailer to put up for yourself, one of the first things you'll check is that all the bits and pieces are there, because you don't want to get to the point you're putting up your tent and you find that there's the poles are missing, or the pegs are missing. And most people have got a story about that camp where they were hiking or something, and the particular equipment they needed was missing. One of my friends once went without the poles, so they ended up having to strap their fly and tent up between trees and things like that. So often there's and we can avoid that if we just check what's happening before we leave and in our planning stage. So I just got a picture of a campsite here. A couple of things to think about. This is a private property, so obviously nice sloping property, fairly high up. So where we are here, we're probably, if we're going to have our camp up here, it's going to be quite windy, but also a good place for a church camp. In the background, we can see that there's a lot of trees, which is probably likely to be a state forest. So if we were out driving around looking for a campsite ready to plan our camp, we'd have to consider all that and who the management authority might be for that area and who we might contact. So other things, we have to consider other types of equipment that we might need to bring along. So if we have a look at campsite setup and safety, this links in with what we're talking about with the planning aspects. So we need to plan each of these aspects as well. But as I say, comes into the camping, the planning process, but it's also about having the right equipment and following some basic principles. So the size of the site, what sort of, is it a club camp or a unit camp? How much space do we need? Is it a hiking camp? What's required there? The drainage, is it a well draining? Is it is it prone to flooding? Is it away from the wind? If it's a windy location, are our tents suitable for that? What sort of tents might we need if we're going to be in a windy location? In storage, food storage and other storage, we need to be able to keep our food away from pests and other animals, trying to keep them out of the campsite, but also keeping them out of the food. So storing them in closed containers and sealed containers, not leaving our rubbish around and things like that. So all these things as part of while we're running the camp, but also as in the setup stage, in the planning stage, thinking about what needs to be brought along to facilitate these. Water. I did think of that in the last picture that I showed. Where would you get the water for that camp in such a hilly location if you've got a large group with you? So there's the safe drinking water. So is there water available at that place? Maybe there's some tank water we could use. Do we have to bring the water in? If it's more of a hiking situation, we probably have to get the water straight from the creek and to treat it from there. And then in that case, what do we need in terms of if we're going to, the most efficient way is to boil the water, but we might need to bring in treatment tablets or other types of filtration to make sure we've got the safe drinking water. And in terms of using that water or washing up or personal hygiene, it's important to make sure that we're not contaminating a water source. If we're getting water from a water source like a river, that we need to be moving about 100 metres, at least 100 metres away from a water source once we need to dispose of that water. And whether that be the washing up water or whether that be, again, personal hygiene, we need to keep our water sources safe. And also in terms of washing up water, rather than just tipping it all in one place, but to be spreading that around and the idea is that that 100 metre buffer is a chance for that water to be filtered as it might make its way back towards that water source. So it's its own filtration system. Considering toilets, whether we've got, sometimes we'll have situations where we've got a caravan park or that sort of thing where we've got toilets in place. But, if we're doing a club camp, we're just as likely to need to bring toilets and set up a toilet. So that toilet, again, is a 100 metre rule away from any water sources. And although for a club camp, we might have a toilet a bit closer to the campsite, usually if you're talking about when we're having to dig a toilet for personal use, so with a trowel, again, we'd be looking at being 100 metres away from a campsite or a track and certainly those water sources. So again, setting those up safely to be used. Cleaning up, we need to leave our campsite in a better condition than what we found it if we can. So we need to be able to dispose of our rubbish, collecting it. We also need to take care of if there's a fire that we've had, we need to take care of that. Not burning the rubbish, but to be carrying out the rubbish that we brought in. So, and then the fire itself, do we need to have a fire? Are we having a big club camp where we want to have a fire? Are we in a location where it's more of a national park where we wouldn't be allowed to have a fire at all? Or if we are able to have a fire in a hiking location, to have a small fire. I guess the other consideration is as I hinted, whether to have a fire at all. Certainly in terms of cooking in a situation with hiking, you're much more efficient to use a portable stove for cooking than to have a fire for cooking. And a fire should be a small fire where we're just burning small sticks. So if the rule of thumb that if you can't break it with your hand, then you shouldn't be burning it. A lot of that material that we might be think about burning is habitat material for animals and even insects. So we want to leave as much of that in place as we can, try not to cause damage. So if we can avoid burning a lot of that, any of that stuff, and leaving it there to just come back part of the natural environment, that's what we want to work towards. We might also consider, there's also ecological or biosecurity type situation where, more so if we're hiking, that we don't want to be spreading dirt from one area to another, perhaps. So making sure you're cleaning your boots or cleaning your equipment or cleaning your trowel, so you're not taking, particularly in a sensitive area, taking dirt from one place and taking it into another place. So again, just a lot of environmental considerations. There was a little video that I had. I just wanted to show just a little on a camp location. So this is a little bit interesting for people who are locked out in COVID, with some of the nice scenery, but just a little short video on camp selection. So let's see if
hi guys,
Tracy
from the Four Nomads here with a few tips on how to pick the perfect campsite. Whether you're in a tent, swag, or even a caravan, there's a few things to look out for. A good starting point is a flat surface on high ground. Remove any sticks and stones and steer clear of any ants' nests. The last thing you want is ants in your pants. If you're looking for a shady spot, just keep an eye on the branches overhead that may fall if the winds pick up. You never want to camp in a dry creek bed in case of flash flooding. If you're near the ocean, check the high tide mark and always keep an eye on the weather report. We always like to keep our campsite cleaner than when we arrived. And remember guys, a good site is always found, not created. I hope these tips have been helpful. I'm looking forward to seeing you out there. Cheers guys.
Anyway, I thought that was an interesting little video that was shared with me. I just thought I'd share it with you. The blonde nomads. So a couple of little tips, but some very interesting scenery they had in a lot of their background. All right, now I think I've gotten back under control with this screen sharing. I'll see if I can put up the PowerPoint and show you the photos I had in mind. Doesn't seem to be where I left that. Try this. Okay. All right. One more time. This. Okay. Apologies while I just get this where I wanted it. So, I'm not sure if we can perhaps see in the chat what's happening. But a couple of factors to consider with some of these examples. So, this is obviously a private property and quite an open location, quite hilly, so no water here. So we have to bring our water with us. We could probably have our fire without too much interference, and just paying attention to the grass. So this one is related to the photo I showed earlier with the hills. This is a low-lying area, which is actually a floodplain. So certainly not a good place to choose to start having, unless it was dry weather, potentially any wet weather would cause some trouble here. And sloping sides are not particularly useful for trying to set up a large-scale camping area. Having a few. Okay. So having a few backwards and forwards things. Matt's asking about camping that location. Well, if it was dry weather, you could do it, but otherwise you might look at just somewhere just to the side of it, close by, and see if there's a slightly higher ground that you could use. But probably best to try and avoid a place like that. The other thing is that because you're camping in the middle of a floodplain, you're actually part of the watercourse. So anything that you're doing in terms of toilets and things like that could easily become part of the watercourse. So, go back to the presentation. This photo and the next one are showing another property. Again, the next photo is related to it. Yeah, I had to skip back out of that because I'm having a few issues with that. See if I can go back and perhaps if I just leave it in this screen, it'll work a bit better. So again, low lying, the trees on the left, the right-hand side of the photo, they're an indication that there's a river nearby. So this one, at least, is not in the river, so it's still flat, possibly a good place to use, but just to be aware that it's wet. If in the wet, the water will gather here and potentially become quite wet. As we said before, grass to be aware of, and then access in and out of the property would be something to consider as well. Now this one, again, is another private property, tree line along the back. So we have another creek at the back, but a general, probably need to bring our water in here, bringing in all of our facilities nice and flat, probably not prone to flooding like some of the others. Trees to be aware of there. That's another important aspect in this camp safety, is the location of trees, and particularly with the wind we mentioned earlier, in a windy location, particularly keeping away from the trees and trying to do that safely. And these next two photos are representing national parks. So this is an alpine or subalpine area. So it's actually Mount Borbor. So you can imagine that you have to specialise camping here. Although you may not need to there'd be smaller groups. It'd be good to check in with the park management, but you can certainly go in this area, but you'll need your specialised equipment. No fires here, so you'd be carrying in water, carrying in your cooking. You may be limited with your water. And important in these areas, there's often huts located around, and you need to try and identify where those huts are, because at the huts you're likely to get water tanks, and that might be your only source of water to be able to provide water for the rest of your camp. So that's another important consideration for these ones. But you can see the alpine environment there. Also, in terms of footprint of you being in that environment, not just setting up your tent wherever you like, but to be careful about using predetermined or pre-used camping areas, or perhaps areas that other people have used, that you're not creating a new camping pad. All right, so the next thing was to just talk a bit about camping equipment and just go through a few examples of some tents, some other sleeping bags, hiking stoves, just to give some ideas on some tips on what's good to consider, things that you might want to get for yourself. So let's have a look. So tent wise, this is just a 2-person or 3-person hiking tent. Good quality tent. There's actually an alpine tent, so yeah, very good quality, lasts a long time. Also comes with a price tag, quite expensive. There's just another example of a 2-person hiking tent. Some clubs might have tents similar to this, but these are all easy to carry, reasonably good quality, and the quality can vary a little bit depending on how much you pay. So, and then your classic sort of large dome tent. A lot of clubs have the Black Wolf type dome tent. So yeah, again, even across the range of those tents, the more you pay, the longer it's going to last, the better the poles are, the more durable the tent is. So some considerations along. And then clubs have they go through this process when they're selecting their tents. But there's a whole range of small, 1 and 2 and 3-person tents that you could choose from the hiking stores. Packs, either a day pack, the one on the left, or a hiking pack, the one on the right, so that you're carrying you, again, mainly for backpacking, but also for day packing, if day walking and just general club camping. When you're doing club activities, you can carry all your stuff with you there. Usually tend to be they're mostly nylon, but they're also canvas packs to consider, and canvas packs a bit heavier but a lot more durable and tend to be more weatherproof or waterproof. So something to consider there. Boots. So you've got leather boots on the right-hand side and Gore-Tex boots. So these are the hiking type boots, so sturdy boots for hiking, but you can get from hiking shoes all the way through. But again, good quality boots if you're going to be walking and standing all day. And a lot of this is to keep you comfortable while you're working as master guides, working with your club, or working as a hike leader or a group leader, so that you've got good equipment to sustain you and look after you through the day. Just an example of some gaiters to wear with when you're hiking. So just to protect you from abrasions from bushes and things as you walk past. Also tends to keep your boot laces a bit better unprotected. And if you're in a leech prone area, it can protect you from leeches as well, or at least keep them further up your leg. And some socks and things, woolen socks. A lot of the clothing can be wool based. It's also synthetic, but a lot of merino wool is the feature of a lot of clothing. Now, sleeping bags. Looking at sleeping bags. What to look for when buying a sleeping bag. So overall, we're looking at the temperature rating, what temperature rating we're expecting. It's a sleeping bag, two sort of basic fillings in sleeping bags, a feather down or a synthetic type poly filling, and then the shape of the sleeping bag. And each of these will affect the overall temperature rating, how warm or cold they are, the overall efficiency of them. So if you're looking for a very warm bag for winter camping and snow camping, you'll be looking at the temperature rating in a down bag, and even the shape will make a difference. So down bags are lighter. You can see they're highly compressible for packing into a hiking pack, but not very good when they get wet. Offer very little insulation and take a long time to dry. Whereas synthetic bags are bulkier, more affordable, and provide greater insulation where they're wet, but they are less warm. So then the mummy shape, which I'll have a look in a minute, basically a tapered shape. You can imagine a mummy, tapered from the chest down to the narrow feet, especially useful for the cold conditions. And all good sleeping bag, important to have a hood to reduce heat loss. Rectangular bags, rectangular shape, often obviously have a lot more air space inside them, which makes them less warm, just with that extra air layer there, and suited to warmer climates. So here's an example of there's a rectangular bag and then a tapered bag. It's not really a mummy shape, but a tapered bag. Just, I don't know if you can, just by looking at it, the brown one to me looks a lot thinner, so have a lot less filling in it. These are more of your classic mummy type bags, or cocoon type bag you can think of. Very warm. The blue one on the left, or blue one on the right, sorry, showing the a collar around the neck as well to for extra warmth. And then this is just an example of two very similar bags. One of them is a feather down bag, and the other one is a synthetic bag. Just to show that really, to look at them, you can't necessarily look at them and see much difference. And they are very similar in a lot of ways in terms of their temperature ratings and overall warmth. You know, you can have the same bags rated to the same temperature, so that you might get a temperature ratings from sort of, often talk about the seasons that you can use the bag for. So a 4-season bag you can use all year round, through to a 3-season or a 2-season bag, or just a bag that the sleeping bag only useful really in the summer, because it's really quite a cool bag, but provides you with that bit of extra warmth in the summer. So you might have a temperature rating of 10 degrees or 5 degrees or 2 degrees, or then down to 0 degrees or even -5, or even lower, some of the bags with lots of fill. I'm pretty sure that those two bags there, the green ones, are about a -5 rating. So again, similar ratings, but just different materials. And then on to sleeping mats themselves. Got the classic foam mat, just a rolled up foam mat. Then you've got the Thermarest type, which is a thin inflatable mattress, not like a classic lilo that people would have from the old rubber lilos, but a very thin mat, and just based on an air pocket that sort of came out a number of years ago, probably over 20 years ago, was designed, and very popular, been very popular, was hiking for all those years. Most of these mats that I show here are just a thin, lightweight bag, not considering the sort of large sort of 4-wheel drive type mats, or even a swag, which are not really suitable for a family camp or something. You might go camping yourself in a particular area, but in terms of club camping and trying to reduce the amount of equipment that you need and the space that it takes up, certainly these more compact bags and mats, and also especially when you're hiking, you need that sort of resource. These are more of the inflatable closed cell mats in a tapered design and even a half design, so they're all coming in different shapes and sizes. And obviously the primary purpose of these mats is to insulate you and protect you from the ground, that you're not getting cold. They provide you with comfort to sleep on, and a nice comfortable mattress, but really a lot of it is down to the insulation that it's providing for you. So even just the round mats come through to these to protect you from the ground. Now, this last one is more of a newer technology, been out for a few years now, but more of a little air pocket design, very thin, almost sort of a thin plastic or thin paper when they're not inflated, and you wonder how durable they are. But very popular. And I've got a video here I'll try and share, just a little video on these, not advertising or anything, but just I thought it was an interesting video on these type of mats. So if I find this one and find that one. It's a very enthusiastic.
Made for fast and light summer adventures, where a tiny pack size is the holy grail. Our award-winning ultralight air mat capitalizes on our air-sprung cell comfort. Our air-sprung cells are the reason you'll sleep more comfortably on our air mats. Much like a pocket spring mattress, the matrix of interconnected air chambers conform to your body's contours without affecting adjacent cells, eliminating the wobble associated with baffle air mats. Quiet 30-40D nylon face fabric with extrusion laminated TPU hits the perfect balance between weight and durability. An antimicrobial treatment is added to the internal TPU lamination to inhibit mold and fungal growth inside the mat. Our multi-function valve integrates a one-way inflate port, a fine-tuned button to adjust pressure, rapid air dump deflate ports all in one tiny, low-profile unit. Constructed with a single layer of medium resolution cells for minimal pack size and weight, while still providing superior comfort and support. Designed to keep your pillow exactly where it's meant to be on your sleeping mat, our unique pillow lock patches are included with all our mats for a slip-free sleep. Integrated into the base of the included stuff sack, our airstream pump sack harnesses the Bernoulli effect to inflate your mat fast with 80% less breaths, saving considerable effort at bedtime and introducing minimal breath condensation. Loved by adventure racers, lightweight backpackers, and bikepackers, our ultralight air mats pack small, yet provide the ultimate lightweight comfort. Available in 4 sizes, you'll hardly notice it in your frame bag or pack side pocket.
So that was a little bit on those. I'll go back to the presentation if I can find it. Having a lot of trouble. Okay. So quick one on camping, portable hiking stoves. So here's a classic jet boil that you might have come across, a little portable propane gas cylinder or tank, and then a burner. And these are the proprietary jet boil ones. So they also come with all the cups and jugs and mugs that you might need. So, but your more standard sort of type is just a little burner, just fold up the little burner with a little, let's say propane canister, replaceable. So just bring on the next canister and away you go. So portable little stove there. The Trangia type methylated spirit stove, very common use amongst school groups. Very easy to use, relatively safe because there's apart from the fuel that can be spilt, but in terms of being in the small container which is housed inside the frame or the holder of the cooking utensils, you don't have the naked flame sort of just out there that anyone can sort of touch. The bowl sits inside and is above the flame, so very versatile, and all your pots are all there together. And the other one is a liquid fuel stove. This is an MSR, so pumping the fuel through into the burner, and so the high-end stove used by experienced hikers and things like that. A lot of the burners, you can change the burners, use a lot of different types of fuel in there, so lots of different options, but certainly a higher end stove if you really wanted a high performance stove. So that's a little bit on stoves. In terms of clothing, we'll talk about a base layer, which is your thermals. So you really got a 3-layer principle: a base layer, a regular layer, and then your outer layer. And using this layering principle to keep you warm by putting on layers or taking off layers. And, you know, you can spend much of your day just in thermals if you needed to. So you've got a choice of synthetic, polyester, or a wool blend base layer. Then you sort of next layer, a lot of the time, so these shirts, shorts, pants, a lot of them are made from synthetic materials. And then onto a top layer, so an outer layer, so an outer shell. So we've got a polar fleece jacket on the left-hand side, and then a down jacket on the right-hand side. So that also provides you with a wind barrier. So you've got the layer principle, but this is designed as a wind barrier as well. There's that outer insulation. And then moving on to rainwear and rain jackets. So a classic sort of plastic type jacket. In a range, there's a range of different jackets. quite cost effective, and then moving up to your trekking jackets, primarily all Gore-Tex jackets. So these are weatherproof, waterproof, weatherproof, windproof, designed to be basically trekking all day. So you've got your jacket and then a good pair of overpants in the same material, or again, you could just have the nylon material initially. Again, all this is just based on what you can afford, to try and buy the best you can afford at the time, and then even build up over time to buy the best product that you can to provide the best protection. Now, this is just a list of some hiking and camping equipment stores that are sort of a lot of the eastern suburbs, but also in the city and thereabouts. Not sure about regional areas necessarily, but you see Macpac stores and things like that these days, but a lot of these are specialty stores, so where you can get that sort of equipment from. So the last little section is just on environmental care, and the course notes highlight this 10-point checklist from the New Zealand and Australia Environmental Code, and a lot of this stuff is just stuff that we've been quite familiar with in terms of what we've learned through Pathfinders. But protecting plants and animals, again, it's all about protecting the environment. So protecting the wildlife. In terms of rubbish, point 2, just to make sure that we're not leaving any rubbish behind that can also can interfere with the wildlife, but to carry in, carry out, and also cleaning up trying to clean up anything that you might find on the trail. Burying toilet waste, so yeah, shallow hole, about 20 centimetres, the classic sort of hiking or trail that we take. That's the sort of depth that you'd be digging a hole to, and then keeping it 100 metres away from waterways, tracks, campsites and huts. We just want to keep that away from anyone coming in contact with it. Now, again, as we mentioned earlier, with the protecting the water sources, making sure we're protecting those water sources, moving 100 metres away from the water source for cleaning, washing, taking our water away to use it rather than using it in the water course itself, and having to, if we're going to be drinking the water, making sure we boil it or chemically treat it or filter it to make sure it's suitable for use and not going to make us sick. In terms of fires, again, if we're in these sort of protected environments or environments that we want to look after, have to really think about whether we needed to use a fire or not. Most of our cooking can be done on a portable stove, which are much less harmful to the environment. So a lot of the time we can focus on using our portable stoves, not using fires at all. And again, we've got the consideration of having to, if we do have a fire, having to douse it with water at the end. So we're using water that we might, we can use for other purposes or not use at all, just leave as the resource. Camping carefully, leaving no trace, trying to use an existing campsite. Again, just being very careful and not damaging the environment. Keeping to the tracks. Again, if there's a track in place, trying to avoid damaging fragile plants. Being considerate of others, people visiting that area. Everyone's got a right to enjoy the natural environment there. So it's the responsibility of everyone to look after it and take care of it. More and more, we're learning more about our cultural heritage and places of significance, cultural and historical significance. So that's something we should treat these places with consideration and respect, but also try and be more aware of what's around, and try and learn a bit more about it before you head off. So something that we're becoming more and more aware of. And then enjoying our outdoor experience. Just making sure we take the time to stop, enjoy what we're viewing, creating memories, enjoying our time in nature, enjoying our time in creation, protecting the environment, and also for ourselves and for anyone else, the next people who are coming along. So that's those little 10-point checklist there. So that's essentially what I had to present, just based on the camping skills material. There is some more information on the Pathfinder website. It's just pathfinder.org.au. And a little while ago, we came across this little app called, it's the app bag of tricks. If you wanted to look it up, but just provide, it's not so much maps and things like that, but just from resources on sort of group activities, other things, fire safety, some different things, but yeah, just a resource that might be useful. And there's bound to be many other apps that you could have a look at as well, just to gain more information. And most of the websites that have got equipment, and even the Bushwalking Victoria, all sorts of places have lots of interesting information on environmental considerations and things that you should take into consideration when you're going out camping. And that's primarily what I had. So if I stop screen sharing that, I don't know if anyone had any questions or comments.
So what was that app, Michael, you just mentioned?
It's called I'll have to go back and find it. It's let's see if I can put it back up again. There's one we came across a couple of years ago when we were doing this one. So it's called it's Wild Exposure Outdoor Ed App Bag of Tricks.
Okay, excellent.
So it's not a free app, it's one you have to pay for, but yes, again, it's got a lot of other, I guess it's more catered to the outdoor ed people who might be trying to run activities and thinking of group games and things that they want to run. But yeah, a lot of bits and pieces there.
Well, thank you, Michael. That was a good oversight of all things related to Pathfinder camping and base camping and even hiking and choosing campsites and etc. Yeah. So, yeah, is there any questions from anybody at this point? How do you go about getting a permit for national parks? Good question, Matthew. Yes, that one's a tough one because you've got to go through Parks Victoria, and usually their restrictions on groups are pretty tough these days. Not so much on singles or families, but certainly on groups that are wanting to use their facilities. So it's often hard to get into a national park for that reason, particularly with a Pathfinder club. That's why we, as a Pathfinder unit in Victoria, stuck with state parks, although they're becoming a little bit more stringent too, I guess, aren't they, Michael?
Yeah, they certainly are. Yep.
From all what we've experienced in the last few years, and it's actually come about because people essentially doing the wrong thing. Groups that are being going into state parks or national parks without a permit or breaching their permits, which makes it harder for everybody else. So yeah, but that good question, Matthew, on that one. So it really is up to all of us, if we do want to use these facilities, that we use them in accordance with the rules and compliance of the state parks, or DELWRP in relation to DELWRP in relation to state parks, and Parks Victoria in relation to national parks. Yeah. And also for that reason, I guess that's why we often camp on private property next to or adjacent to a state park or a national park. That makes it easier to access those facilities and to clear some of the hurdles to be able to use the facility without actually camping on the land itself. So yeah, there are some ways around it. Not necessarily easy, but yes, it can work. So yeah, well, if there's no more questions, I guess, yeah, we want to thank you, Michael, for taking the time to share with us tonight. Have you had dinner yet?
No, not yet. That's about an hour away.
Oh, right. There you go.
Yeah.
Here's all these others online enjoying their dinner, and you've got to you've had to earn yours. Well, anyway, that's okay. I rushed mine down before our Zoom meet tonight, so that was good. Anyway, I'll have a prayer with us now and close, and thank you again, Michael, for leading out tonight. Where are you staying tonight?
In Traralgon.
Traralgon. Ah, okay, there we are. So praise God for Zoom that we can do it from anywhere, so long as we've got Wi-Fi or some sort of signal. Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, we thank you for the privilege of being able to enjoy the outdoors. Some of us a bit frustrated at the moment, though. We're being contained because of COVID restrictions, and we really look forward to getting outdoors and outdoors camping and hiking and walking and enjoying the outdoors and the fresh air and all that God has created for us to experience and enjoy. Thank you for Michael's presentation tonight. Thank you for all that he's been able to share with us tonight from his years of experience of Pathfinder and Pathfinder leadership and some learnings along the way. Also the different equipment that we've got available these days to help to make our experiences that much more enjoyable. And we thank you tonight for our Pathfinder ministry, and we just pray for all our Pathfinders here who are training for their master guide. Bless them, I pray, and help them as they go through their learnings, that they may be able to really pick up some good tips and learnings that will help them to be effective leaders with our Pathfinder clubs moving forward. Thank you for their commitment tonight, and thank you for being part of this Zoom meet. And we just thank you for Michael's training experience again, and bless him. And we just pray that you'll be with us tonight as we go from here. And we look forward to one day soon being out of lockdown, that we can go out to enjoy the outdoors. And may that be soon. And may, in the meantime, you help us to be resilient and patient, and to take all we can from this experience tonight. But also in the meantime, may we help others to be of encouragement to others through this time, and also to ring up friends or others who may be a little bit down, and help us to do that what we can to be a real pathfinder to what you've called us to be, I pray. And I ask all these things in Jesus' wonderful name. Amen.